Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining our third session. We launched this post-webinar series a few weeks ago, where my main goal or end is to analyze 2022. Session 1 was focusing a lot concerning what happened before and during the election. Session 2, we focused more concerning the role of youth on the participatory governance. And this session, it's more what next after election, as most of you have been asking me via email. So how best can we engage ourselves after elections? Now, this session will focus more concerning the county integrated development development plan. With our special guests, he will share with us some practical tips, some steps, some tools we can use for the analysis of CIDP, which means County Integrated Development Plan. I'm being informed that some counties are still on the process of developing their CIDP, while some of the counties, like Kilifi County, is waiting for engagement. My question is, have you engaged yourself? Or not? Or if not, why? But don't worry, you'll have opportunity to learn about what's the CIDP process, what's the budgeting process at the county level, how best you can engage yourselves, and have some best tools for your engagement. Thank you so much. So before I welcome our today's speaker, please mute yourself. Before we welcome our today's speaker, I'm requesting if you're not talking, please mute yourself. And if you like to ask questions, please just raise your hand and I will give you opportunity. Mr. John Kinuvia, session is yours. Most welcome.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Haron, and good afternoon, everyone. And it's really nice to join all of us this afternoon. I think it's the right time to be having conversations about, what counties are doing, because we just elected a new set of governors. And so there is, I don't want to call it a rush, but there is a very specific need for us to think through how do we plan for what the approach to development across the counties is going to be, and the county integrated development plans are central to that conversation. But in a broader sense, is also really to appreciate that all of us are in this call to discuss a conversation that doesn't happen often and in many quarters. And so it's really to appreciate you, Haron, and your team for putting together a conversation where we can speak about how governments plan, how government budget, and what our role in that space is really going to be. So I'm going to take about 25 minutes or so to introduce the conversation, because I really see this as a discussion that is to happen amongst all of us in the meeting. So for me, really is to get the conversation started. And I'll share a presentation, and as we flow along, I'll share a couple of documents as well that all of us can keep for future reading. So Haron, if you allow me, I can share. I can share my. Where is it? I can share my presentation.
Sure, I think you are a co-host. You can proceed.
All right. Thank you. So I hope that okay, I hope everyone can see it clearly. Then I can get started. Visible on your side?
Yes, sure. It's clear.
Okay, thank you. So my name is John.
Sorry, I think you can put it in presentation mode.
Oh, it's on presentation mode on my side, but that means I have to change something. Let me.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, you're seeing it well from that perspective?
I think it's back to the normal part.
Okay, let me try it again and see if that works. Is it good now?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, thank you. So I think it will be good for me to start with an introduction of myself and the team that I am with here. So my name is John Kinuthia. I work with International Budget Partnership Kenya. And I'm here with my colleagues, Irene, Justine, Biagon, and Faithan. For us at IBP, our primary goal and the work that we do is geared towards building the capacity of civil society organizations and citizens in whatever formations they are organized in to understand and to be able to engage with national and county budgets. A central belief that we have at IBP is that the best auditor of government budgets is an informed citizen. So we pay a lot of attention to how we can build the capacity of as many interested Kenyans to be able to understand how budgets work, the processes that budgets go through, the decisions that are made along those processes, and the actors that play a role in the decisions around government revenue collection and spending. So I'm going to focus, of course, today on the county integrated development plans. And as I mentioned, as new governments and governors have settled in at the county level, one of the first things that they have to put in place to guide how they are going to approach development within all the 47 counties is to put together these 5-year plans. Now, a bit of background. So the county integrated development plans, of course, documents that cover. Sorry for that. There are plans that span a period of 5 years. And I think it's important here to mention that this means they basically cover the period, the political life of a governor of 5 years. And then after another round of election, then we have to do another CIDP. Now, the value and importance of CIDPs is actually also captured in the law. And when you look at the language that we have in our budgeting and planning laws, is that no public funds can be spent without a planning framework. And so, planning documents like the CIDPs or the annual development plans then become really important, because it means then the budgets that we discuss downstream borrow heavily from what is already discussed and approved within the CIDPs. So as we are having the discussion today, I think the one thing I will really encourage all of us is to keep thinking about things that we work on, things that we find important, and see what spaces then they fit in, and especially at the CIDP level, to see how we can bring those conversations there as well. So it's not just at the point of budgeting, but also at the point of planning. Then it becomes really important to make sure that our voice is also influencing those spaces. So CIDPs are really important and crucial. Even when we speak about annual development plans, those annual development plans borrow very heavily from what the CIDPs have. And I'm sure there are many of us in this call who have tried to engage with county governments. And when we say, we are a youth group and we are trying to get the government to allocate resources to projects or programs X, then the government will say, but was it in the CIDP? If it was not in the CIDP, we can't put it in the budget. So I think those kind of interactions give you an idea about how important the CIDPs are and how important it is for us to engage with them. Now, the CIDP and all the documents it informs do not operate in a vacuum. All these documents inform a budgeting process, and that budgeting process happens continuously, it never stops. And so we have to start by placing where this whole conversation around the CIDP sits. within our budgeting framework. But even more importantly is for us to understand that that framework is where the CIDP gets actualized. It's one thing to have a plan in place. I think there is a common phrasing in Kenya that we have very good plans, but we don't implement them. So CIDPs have to be implemented, and where they are implemented is actually within the budgeting process. So I'd like to start with that because it's really vital that then we understand that process and what decisions are being made in it so that we can then have a better picture of how do we utilize what is captured in the CIDPs so that we can influence the decisions that are being made throughout the budgeting process. Now, the one thing you realize is that the CIDP does not have a very specific approval timeline in the law. But as we know, is that it runs in the life of county government. So as I said earlier, really the moment governors are sworn in, the first thing you always expect is that they will start working on a CIDP. So that always is the place when we expect CIDPs to be out. And I am assuming that's the reason why Haron thought this was an important meeting to have now. Because CIDPs are being discussed right now. In some counties, the public participation processes have already kicked off. In others, that should be coming in the next few weeks, if not the next few months. Now, this is not. I'm not going to walk through this, but I just wanted to show this, and I'm just going to drop it in the chat, a link to this in the chat. But this is how the budgeting process in Kenya looks like. And it has quite a number of decisions and documents that are produced along that route. And each of these spaces, there are decisions being made about priorities and how they should be funded and how they are being implemented, all the way to the end, the little section you see in red. That is how, when we audit, how we've actually spent our resources. And so the CIDP has to be implemented in this very detailed process. And the reason why I'm saying I'll not go through this a lot is because this is the conversation of what next after CIDPs are approved. So I've shared it I've shared a link in the chat with all of you so that you can have a copy of it. And within that document also it has details of what each of these stages entails. So my advice is please keep that document very close because it will always tell you the dates when certain decisions are being made so that you can prepare yourself to engage with those decisions. But everything that is along this whole process is informed by CIDPs. So CIDPs are really, really critical in terms of how the budget process then is responsive or not responsive to the needs of citizens. Now, the thing I want to pay more attention to today is basically to get us into a conversation of, so what is it that we should expect of CIDPs and how should we understand those CIDPs? And in doing that, I'm going to share a couple of questions we can ask of any CIDP from any county that we are from, as basically a place to start a very basic bit of learning of what CIDPs contain, because CIDPs have, of course, multiple sets of information. There are quite a number of decisions that are made within them. And so it's important for us to say, if I got a CIDP and I want to engage with my county government, what are some of the things that I should keep in mind that will help me engage with that process? But even beyond that, it will help me understand what a CIDP should provide and what kind of decisions are being made in it. So I'm going to share a couple of questions, and also at the end of this, I think Haron already has a copy of this tool, but this is also a tool that we will share with you so that you can have it ready in preparation to engage with the CIDPs in your county. Now, anytime that we get CIDPs, I think the first thing that CIDPs have to do is to look backwards. And by looking backwards is to say, it's not the first time we're implementing budgets. It's not the first time counties are implementing development plans. And so it's good for us to learn from history. It's good for us to see what has happened in practice. and try and use the lessons from the past to be able to improve what we are planning to do in the next 5 years. So the first question you have to ask anytime you're having a conversation around the CIDP is whether the CIDP provides a review of previous implementation of other CIDPs and what the implications might be for the current one. And as I said, you want to make sure that the lessons from the past help you improve on what you want to do going forward. And in doing this, you're basically looking at a couple of key elements of previous CIDPs. Number one, you're looking at how much revenue the county was able to mobilize in the last 5 years, what its spending looked like in those 5 years, because that gives you an idea of the capability of the county in terms of raising revenue, and also the capability of the county to execute whatever plans that it had in place. We don't want to develop a CIDP that is just a wish list that cannot be implemented. And so history really helps us to be able to see what have we done before, what were the challenges, what are some of the things that we can do differently. You have to look at the trends of how things have been done in the past. But in addition to that, also you want to look at some of the critical, or some of them you might call flagship, or some of them are just big development projects that might not have been completed in the last 5 years, but you don't want them to stall, right? So if you're doing a big stadium in Kisii and it has not ended and we've gotten into a new dispensation, you want the CIDP to be able to say, by the way, there are a couple of things we did not finish in the last life of the CIDP, and that is what we would like the next CIDP not to abandon. Otherwise, you have a lot of stalled projects. And this is not theoretical. In 2017, we saw a lot of this play out in the counties. A lot of projects that were just abandoned because new governors came in and they were like, those were projects of the previous governor, it's none of my business. And so you had a lot of stalled maternity wings in hospitals. You had a lot of stalled boreholes that were not completed and piped and the likes. So you want to pay attention to whether there are any things that need to be carried over from previous periods into the new CIDPs. The last one, I've spoken a bit to this. What are some of the issues that remain a challenge after the implementation of the previous CIDP, and how does the current CIDP address these challenges? So big part, you want to look at historical performance. You want to look at what has happened in the last 5 years, because then that helps you improve on what then you project to do for the next 5. Second important thing to look at is to make sure that the CIDP provides a very clear and realistic development strategy for the county for the coming 5 years. And this is mostly at the point when you are developing and deciding what the priorities should be. So CIDPs should be very clear and specific. It should be easy to see how what is being proposed can be done, and that it's going to be something that can practically be done. So they should show clearly how the priorities were selected, and that those priorities are really responding to what is most needed in the county. Governments are not very good at doing this, at justifying why they want to do certain things and why they don't want to do other things. So anytime you're engaging on the CIDP in your counties, you want to make sure that that's a conversation that happens. If you're in a public participation forum where the CIDP is being discussed, you want to make sure that the government is actually making an effort to justify why the CIDP is focusing on certain things and not on others. And this bit of being realistic is really important. I remember back in the first round of CIDPs in 2013, we had gone to with the county government officials. The minister, the CEC for transport and something, said they wanted to build an international airport in Taita Taveta. At that point, Taita Taveta was getting like 3 billion shillings in a year. And you can imagine how much it costs to build an international airport. So you want to look at your CIDP from the lens of, are these things that the county is supposed to be doing? So number one, are they functions of the county government? But secondly, are they functions that the county government can actually fund because it doesn't make sense to have a CIDP worth 60 billion shillings, yet in the 5 years, your county will only receive 20 billion shillings. Where is the rest of the money going to come from? So that's what this question really is looking at, just to make sure that things are realistic and they are practical and that they fit within the resource envelope that the county is going to have for the 5 years. Now, the third question looks at the CIDP from a more national point of view. Now, we have 47 counties that exist in one country. And so that means that there is still a broad national development agenda that we have as a country, and you'll find that in Vision 2030. You'll find it in things like the Big Four. You'll find it in the medium-term plans that are done by government. And CIDPs have to find a way to link up to what we are trying to do, nationally as a country. And so you want to make sure that there is coherence in the development agenda that is there, because if one county was to wake up and do something that is completely divergent, not only does that create a bit of a challenge in terms of whether the country is moving in the same direction, but also it could mean the county might miss out on opportunities where some nationally driven priorities will not be implemented in those counties. So it's really good to make sure that the CIDP is linking well with some of these national conversations. But even within the counties, we have spatial plans, we have sectoral plans. So spatial plans are more focused on how we utilize the space within the county. So if you are developing factories, which side of the county are you planning to put factories? If you're building international airports, where do you want to put the international airports? If you're building hospitals and what have you, how do you utilize available land that the government has? You have sectoral plans that are more focused on the sectors. So what is our agenda around health? What is our agenda around agriculture? The CIDP should be able to incorporate all those. Interesting bit, spatial plans and sectorial plans are 10 years long. So really the CIDP is borrowing from even longer term plans from that sense. So this linking is really an important part of making sure that CIDPs are not being developed in isolation, but that they actually directly speak. They speak to other plans that are there in the country as well. Now, the fourth important thing to also keep in mind is that CIDPs are supposed to really, in a way, speak to programs and projects that are being done in the county that are supposed to have a very wide impact. Sometimes people call them transformative. Other people will call them agenda setting. There's a lot of English to it. But does the CIDP provide for programs and transformative projects that will be implemented to be able to achieve certain desired developmental change that has an impact across the county? So this is a really important question as well, because then it means it's at this point where you are really prioritizing what you want to do for a particular period of time and why those are the things that are most important to do in the county at that particular point. So if you come from a county that is heavily affected by malaria as an example, so you'll be looking to see whether the county's CIDP is responding and is projecting to put together programs and projects that are directly going to be able to address the challenge of malaria. So CIDPs have, of course, to be implemented through annual development plans and budgets. Again, now here is where the level of specificity and practicality then becomes very helpful in the budgeting process. So if the programs and the projects are very clear, then it's very easy then to transfer them to these annual plans, but also the annual budgets that we do. Clear programs and projects details will also help, of course, in making sure that when the county is allocating resources in the budgeting process, at least the things were clear in the CIDP, and now it's easier to be able to see how they sit in the budget. Therefore, the CIDP should include, and the level of detail I'm speaking here to is, for example, the cost of major capital projects. So how much is it going to cost, for example, to build a dam? So it's not just to say we need a dam. the county has to be able to say, and building that dam will cost 50 million shillings. Number two, the status of projects, showing where they are. So are they new projects? Are they ongoing projects? Remember that first conversation we were having about looking backwards and looking at history. It means that there are projects that might be ongoing. So you want to know what the status of those projects are. And as you will be interacting with the CIDPs from your counties, some counties are usually kind enough to have sections where they say, here we are speaking to ongoing projects, here we are speaking to new projects, and these are projects that had stalled that we want to revive, right? So the status of the projects is really important. The source of funding of the projects is also really critical. Are these projects that are going to be funded from the county's own revenue? Are they going to be partnership with the national government? Are they going to be projects that are in partnership with donors? Are they projects that are going to be funded by loans? Remember, counties can borrow loans at their level. And Laikipia is one county that has already started this. They floated an infrastructure bond a couple of months ago. So what is the source of funding? Because this is where you start getting more realistic, because if we don't know where the money is going to come from, then already you can tell that those projects we are planning to do might actually not get done. So getting it clear at the CIDP level then makes it easier into the the last bit is also the implementation plan of the projects across the 5 years, and I'll speak a bit more to this at the end. But also you want to know, when will the project start? How shall we monitor the implementation of that project? Will it be a phased project? Will it be a project that will be done in 1 year? Those kind of details are also really important, because it means then the annual budgeting process then knows that there's a project X, that we have to allocate resources over a period of 3 years. So that kind of helps with the budgeting detail as well. Number 5, does the CIDP provide a clear and realistic revenue mobilization strategy over the 5-year period? So this one I've already touched on it a bit. So it should be clear how the CIDP will be funded. And as I was saying, you cannot put together a CIDP worth 100 billion shillings, yet the revenue you expect to collect or generate as a county is only going to be half of that. So what does that mean? Does it mean we are throwing things in the dark and hope something sticks? Does it mean there are certain bases of revenue that we are not sure about? Whatever it is bad budgeting practice for you to have expenditure lines that you don't know where the money will come from. And that's the reason why CIDPs have to make a good effort at getting very close to a realistic target of how much money is going to be available to implement the CIDPs. So here you want to look at existing revenue sources, such as what comes from the national level, what will be generated within the counties. Projections of those revenue then is where you want to make sure that they are realistic and also based on what we've received before. So if we've been receiving 5 billion shillings, you cannot wake up and say, oh, now we think we'll get 10 billion shillings. Budgets don't work like that. You always look backwards to get an idea of just how you can perform. But also the CIDP should leave space for innovation around new revenue sources that a county can have access to. And this is a space where you see a lot of counties trying things, and some of them have succeeded. Are there county investments? In the first 5 years of counties, you had some counties that were building hotels. There were others that were building factories like Kitui did. And so the county makes money from investments that they've made as a county. Borrowing, I've already spoken to the fact that counties can borrow, but also donor partnerships. Smart counties have really utilized that third one. So you run a system in your county that attracts donors. You are transparent, your audit reports are quite clean, you have very innovative approaches to how you deliver services, you attract donors. So in a sense, you want to look also to the CIDP should leave space for counties to also be innovative on new revenue sources that they can put together. A sixth important question to ask, does the CIDP indicate areas of coordination between the national government, other county governments, development partners, and stakeholders in the development of the county. As I said, counties don't operate in vacuums. And some of the issues that counties engage with are regional in nature. So think of water as an example. Nairobi does not have a dam that they can get water from. Nairobi Dam died many years ago. So Nairobi is dependent on Murang'a for water. It's dependent on Nyandarua for water and Kiambu. So anytime Nairobi is thinking about water and they are putting their plans in the CIDP, they literally have to coordinate with the neighboring counties. And so the CIDP should be able to indicate those kind of engagement and coordination that has to happen for the CIDP to be realized. So whether it's the national government, whether it's other counties for regional issues, whether it's donors, the private sector, and even NGOs, it's really important for the county to be able to highlight that we are planning to do some issue X, but to be able to implement it, we have to work with Murang'a, we have to work with Kiambu, we have to work with Machakos, and this is how we think that contribution will look like. And this really helps to avoid duplication, which I'm sure many of you have interacted with, where we will see, I think the Mulika Mwizi lights were the simplest examples of what duplication can look like. So the national government was building Mulika Mwizis in the slums, and then the counties were building them. And some places like sometime back in Kibera, there were places where you had those Mulika Mwizi lights almost like 10 meters apart, because everyone wants to show they are working. And there are very interesting photos of such from other counties as well on social media. So you avoid that by being preemptive at the beginning and thinking on how do we make sure we coordinate so that there is less risk of duplication. The seventh important question, does the CIDP propose steps to promote equitable distribution of resources? There are a lot of inequalities at the county level, among wards, among sub-counties. If you think of a county like Kilifi, if you look at the poverty level in Malindi, where Malindi town is, and you look at the poverty level in places like Ganze, I think Ganze in Kilifi, you can see just how high the poverty rate is in two areas that are in the same county. And so part of the big role of CIDPs is making sure that the investments we make within the CIDP are dealing with those inequalities. And this was one of the things that was at the root of devolution, is to make sure that there was an equitable distribution of resources, so that those areas that are not accessing services are brought up so that they can enjoy the same level of services as other areas within the country, but also within the county. So the CIDP should provide information that shows how